says I'm alive. I guess that's a good thing. Unless, of course, I don't know. Today we're going to talk about the problem of pain, but specifically, why is there evil, and why is there things that are, because we don't want to use a word like, would rather there not be. Why are there things that exist that you would rather there not be? We'll just simplify it as much as we possibly can. Let me start off with a question. What is the least worst thing you think you have ever done? Not the worst. What's the least worst thing you think you have ever done? In the history of your life, what do you think the least worst thing you've ever done is? The reason I want you to think about the least worst thing you've ever done is because there's significance to this. What does it mean to quantify undesirability? The first question about things you think ought not be is, are you right? Are you right? Are you right? Do you have, speaking of right, do you have a right to not have something that you think ought not be as far as you are concerned? There is an elephant pooping somewhere in the world right now. That does not affect my life. However, if that same elephant did that in my bed, I would consider that something that ought not be. Proximity, context, these things matter. So there's nothing wrong with an elephant doing what an elephant does, but I say there's something wrong with an elephant even being in my house in the first place. Okay? Might not be the kind of I'm referring to, though. The ought not be category of things that ought not be no matter what might. I don't know. Just think about it. So we're thinking of the least worst thing you've ever done. I mean, that's really, really, really hard to narrow down. That, me rubbing my nose on a video, that could be one of the top 1,000 or top million least worst things I've ever done. The fact that I have a gray hair somewhere that I haven't plucked or something, that could be in the top 100 million least worst things that I've ever done. Broaden the scope. Let's broaden the scope. Also think of the least worst thing that you've never done. What's the least worst thing that you've never done? Why is it that you are confident that you know the worst thing that you've ever done, but you don't have a clue of the least worst thing that you've ever done? Why is it so easy to determine the worst thing you've ever done? What helps you determine that? So, there's a word that very few people are aware of these days, due to the degradation and what's another good word for this? The intentional manipulation. We'll just keep it as simple as language, aka the degradation of language. Many people are unfamiliar with the term transgression. So look it up in a paper dictionary if you are capable of doing such a thing. I would recommend a paper dictionary that you can touch with your hands. So look up this word, transgression. Now I want you to think of the smallest, infinitesimally small transgression you've ever done towards yourself. What's the smallest transgression you've ever had against yourself, against others, against something that's in a third category, against the unknown? Have you ever done something against the unknown, something that affects reality but doesn't necessarily affect another human being or even yourself? I don't know. Is there a category that exists as such? I don't know. Think about it. So now that you're pondering on the least transgressions, the leastest. I know it's not a word. Smallest just seems like a incomplete. Doesn't quite make the mark. I don't know. Smallest. Insignificant. The most insignificant transgression you've ever imposed upon yourself, you've ever imposed upon others, and you've ever imposed upon the unknown. A category I'm calling the unknown, defined as something that is not others and not you. The third category that doesn't affect other humans, that doesn't affect other or you. So think of these transgressions. See if you can name one. You might not be right. In fact, it's almost certain you won't be right. Almost a guarantee. Almost a guarantee. Okay? That's okay. I want you to at least think about it. Just because there might be a logical flaw in determining your least transgression, it's okay. It's okay. This is thought exercise so that you can better understand the concept as a whole. Why do transgressions take place? All right. For the determinists, for the fatalists, for the nihilist, I'm having trouble understanding how a transgression exists in your worldview. In simulation theory, with all actions being associated with programming, there can be no such thing as transgression as we perceive it, because it's all programmed. Within a program simulation theory, it doesn't make sense to complain. Dissatisfaction is fabricated. It's a farce. Doesn't make any sense. Yes, we all know games such as The Sims and the franchise that continued to this day. The little characters can demonstrate. It's an important distinction there. They can demonstrate. To say they experience something is beyond foolish. But they can demonstrate sadness. They can demonstrate dissatisfaction. They can demonstrate that. It's part of the programming, based on a matrix of, not to be confused with the title, but a matrix of criteria that that based on their level, it influences what they're going to demonstrate, whether it's happiness or dissatisfaction. I'm really not comfortable with the design of this vehicle carrier in front of me. It's really disconcerting. Truly, it's disturbing. Yeah, I like to yawn. I actually enjoy yawning. It's kind of pleasurable. Brings a little water to the eyes, a little extra oxygen to the brain. I think it's pretty cool. Yawning is pretty cool. All right. So, I'll accept any video responses on the concept of transgression within a framework of nihilism, within a framework of determinism, within a framework of simulation theory. Help me understand how transgression is logical, because help me out. See what you can do. See what you can do. All right. So we'll step outside of those ideologies. We'll grapple with another one. That's a very clever spot. The postings. Okay, I mean, we could talk about the transgression of the speed limit. Okay. The question is, what is rule? What are rules? What are laws? What is advantageous? What is not advantageous? What is dissatisfaction? What is displeasure? What is discomfort? What is comfort? What is pleasure? What is happiness? What is sadness? What is joy? What is sorrow? What are any of these things? Is one man's joy another one's sorrow? And if so, who deserves more of one than the other? Who gets to decide? Why? Why? It's a valid question. Why even why? Why are you even questioning? To question anything that happens indicates that change or an alternative is an option. Not of the past, but of the future. To question any event of any kind that you deem in your own mind to be not advantageous indicates that you believe in the future the same event may be avoided or should be avoided. Why do you believe that? Why do you believe that? Why do you have the preferences that you have? Where did they come from? Did they come from culture? Well, if that's true, how is that possible? That culture would both bring forth ideas of things of how they ought to be, but culture would also bring forth actions that are the opposite of the way that somebody perceives things ought to be. Okay? What about your own brain? There's a million potential ways or more to look at this. What is a brain? What comprises its contents? What makes up its thoughts? Is it arbitrary? Is it by design? Where do these thoughts come from? Is it experience? Is it nature? Is it instinct? What is instinct? What is anything? Where does the concept of advantageous come from? Where does the concept of good or bad come from? Is good always good? And yes, it does depend on what you mean by good. You see, ask the question again. Is one man's joy another man's sorrow? And by man, I mean human. Person, okay? Is there ever a time that one thing can be joy to all? Is there ever a time when one thing can be joy to all? It's a good question. Is there something that's universally celebrated? Is there something that's universally enjoyed? Is there something that is universally advantageous? 100% of the time. This too is a good question. Is there anything on the other end of the spectrum that is 100% of the time not the time brings forth sorrow? Well, all of these questions require answers. And the source of those answers is so varying depending on who you are, where you're from, what your culture is. However, let's suppose that there is an answer. Let's suppose that there are elements that exist within the universally good category. I am going to make the statement that all things that are not universally good are all instantly by default not ideal, not advantageous. Could be called evil, could be called harmful. If they are not universally good, then there is something wrong with them. By definition, something is wrong with them, according to someone. It is a good question to ask, what could be universally good? What could be universally good? And if we could determine a list of things that are universally good, and if we were capable of pursuing those things, ought we? I don't know. Think about it. What if you were to say, based on a matter of perspective, it was possible that while being on the list of universally good things, there were actually individuals, creatures, whatever, that perceived these universally good things as ungood. Double plus ungood even. Aha! Well, that just instantly means that they're no longer universally good. Aha! Well, that depends on what you value, what your value system is regarding perspective. Is perspective true? Absolutely. What I'm saying is, just because someone thinks it, does that make it the case? If I wholeheartedly believed that wills, the things used for travel, were not advantageous, that I thought that wills were a horrible, terrible thing, and let's say hypothetically that wills were within the category of universally good. By the way, I see a thumbs up. It's incredible. Thank you for the thumbs up. Appreciate that. Whoever you are, somebody that actually showed up and thumbs up the video. Appreciate you. But if I didn't appreciate you, would that make that thumbs up no longer universally good? If it hypothetically was previously universally good. All right. So it will, hypothetically existing within the universally good category, if I perceive it within my own personal brain, and I'm the only element, the only component of the entire universe. And when I say universe, I mean all of existence, anywhere, all time, anytime, all existence. Okay? And we'll even categorize all non-existence, if you want to, whatever. So let's say that it's the will exists in this category of universally good, universally advantageous. It is what, just for sake of argument, that's what we're going with. All right, and I am the only one, and I believe this. I have concluded within my heart, mind, whatever, that is the case. It is not advantageous. It's not good. Does that change anything? Some will say yes. It only takes one. Okay? Then I am destroyed in this make-believe example. I am utterly removed from existence. I enter into the non-existence category, okay? Not even a molecule exists anymore. For sake of argument, I existed, past tense. For sake of argument, in this category, categorical example, I existed. Does that change anything? Does that change whether or not the will may exist in the universally good category? Okay? This is not an oversimplification. It is also not an overcomplication. These questions are valuable when we're trying to determine what is evil and what is good. Who determines what is evil and what is good? Where does it come from? Who gets to decide? And who gets to do something about it? Has something been done about it? Is there a solution you are not aware of? Is that solution universal? Well, answer the question. Consider the options. All right. This has just been extremely precursory. It's probably one of the most contemplated topics in the history of man. Why? I have a simple question. Why is survival advantageous? Where does the concept of survival come from? The answers to that question could be so vastly different depending on your perspective. However, survival is the crux of, it's a motivating factor. Let's put it that way. Survival is a motivating factor for the discussion on what is good and what is not good. Ungood. Double plus ungood. So without the concept or need of survival, a desire for survival, if that did not exist, then there would be no interest in the concept of goodness. It would be a non-issue. It probably would never, ever come up. I would say that in a mathematical way, survival pre-necessitates, I don't even know if that combination of sounds and concepts and words makes very much sense. Survival is the prerequisite to the concept of what is advantageous. Okay? Survival is required first. A need for survival, specifically. Inasmuch that there's a need for survival, advantageous becomes a thing. Inasmuch that survival is not needed, what is disadvantageous, what is advantageous is not relevant at all. At all. Feel free to oppose that idea. If you have a better way of breaking that down, and you can somehow work your way through that, I'm happy to see such a reply. But I am postulating that survival, the need for survival, goes before all other things. Therefore, I'm asking the question, is the need for survival within the category of universally good? Universal good. Is the need for survival universally good? That's the question. Is this relevant? Well, this is just really philosophical, and it doesn't really accomplish anything, and it's not even relevant, some might say. Well, friend or enemy, whatever, I'm not sure that there are very many things more relevant. There is a group of individuals on our planet that are indicating that our planet would be much better off without humans. That, my viewer, my listener, is why this is relevant. The question of whether or not survival, the need for survival, is universally good is a good question. It's because it's being called into question as not universally good. I think, seeing as how there is evidence within every worldview that has ever existed, there is plenty of evidence that any worldview contains the need for survival within their ideology. It seems to be that it would be an assumption, not just a convenient assumption, but a lot, and as such is universally good. Matter of fact, as a binary operation in existence, that there's a need for survival as a state of being, and therefore no judgment can be placed upon it. It's not a I deserve to exist concept. It's not a personal thing. It's beyond personal. It is the nature of existence that there is a need for survival. That's my statement. Again, this concept is deep. Thousands of years and focusing in on this subject of deep relevance to our reality, deep relevance to the nature of all things. It is a very relevant topic. Okay? We will continue to unfold this concept. It will not be completed in a matter of 45 minutes. I can't do what thousands and thousands of philosophers weren't able to do in a lifetime in just 45 minutes. But I gave you a starting point, some things to think about. As a recap, think on the least worst thing you've ever transgressed upon yourself, upon others, and upon a possible third category, not others, not self. I'm leaving this as open as possible for all minds to ponder on, regardless of your ideologies. I'm sure there's a group out there that are like the anti-thoughters, besides the thought police, because those guys are that way too, obviously. A group of people that they don't want to think, they just want to haphazardly exist. There's probably a handful of people on this planet that hope to progress through life as spontaneously as possible. For those guys, I can't help you. I'm not apologizing. I just stating that I can't help you. I can't make things better for you. What I can do is start asking some good questions, and I'll help you understand where these questions lead to. A little bit of an interruption there. It's okay. Nothing happened at all. I was paying attention this time. It's all good. So, have a good life, and we'll find out what that means.